Welcome back to our bedtime story, The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. We're down to our last chapter. I hope you have enjoyed our story. So without further ado, Chapter 15, Rapidash, the Ridiculous. The next turn of the road brought them out from among the trees, and there across green lawns, sheltered from the north wind by the high wooded ridge at its back, they saw the castle of Anvard. It was very old, and built of a warm, reddish-brown stone. Before they had reached the gate, King Loon came out to meet them, not looking at all like Aravis's idea of a king, and wearing the oldest of old clothes. For he had just come from making the rounds of the kennels with his huntsman, and only stopped for a moment to wash his doggy hands. But the bow with which he greeted Aravis as he took her hand would have been stately enough for an emperor. "Little lady," he said, "we bid you very heartily welcome. If my dear wife were still with us, we could make you better cheer, but could not do it with a better will. And I am sorry that you have had misfortunes and been driven from your father's house, which cannot be but a grief to you. My son Cor has told me about your adventures together and all your valor. It was he who did all that, sir. Why, he rushed a lion to save me." "Eh, what's that?" said King Loon, his face brightening. "I haven't heard that part of the story." When Aravis told it, and Cora, who had very much wanted the story to be known, though he felt he couldn't tell it himself, didn't enjoy it so much as he had expected, and indeed felt rather foolish. But his father enjoyed it very much indeed, and in the course of the next couple of weeks told it to so many people that Cora wished it had never happened. Then the king turned to Win and Bree, and was just as polite to them as to Aravis, and asked them a lot of questions about their families and where they had lived in Narnia before they'd been captured. The horses were rather tongue-tied, for they weren't yet used to being talked to as equals by humans, grown-up humans, that is. They didn't mind Aravis and Cor. Presently Queen Lucy came out from the castle and joined them, and King Loon said to Aravis, "My dear, here is a loving friend of our house, and she has been seeing to your apartments are put to rights for you better than I could have done it." "You'd like to come and see them, wouldn't you?" said Lucy, kissing Aravis. They liked each other at once, and soon went away together to talk about Aravis's bedroom and Aravis's boudoir, and about getting clothes for her, and all the sorts of things girls do talk about on such an occasion. After lunch, which they had on the terrace, it was cold birds and cold game pie, and wine and bread and cheese. King Loon ruffled up his brow and heaved a sigh, and said, "Hi-ho! We still have that sorry creature Rapidash on our hands. My friends, we must need resolve what to do with him." Lucy was sitting at the king's right, and Aravis on his left. King Edmund sat at one end of the table, and the Lord Darren faced him on the other. Dar and Peridin, Cor and Corin were at the same side as the king. "Your Majesty would have a perfect right to strike off his head," said Peridin. "Such an assault as he puts him on a level with assassins." "It is very true," said Edmund, "but even a traitor may mend. I have known one that did," and he looked very thoughtful. "To kill this Rapidash would go near to raising war with the Tizarok," said Darren. "Ah, fig for the Tizarok," said King Loon. "His strength is in numbers, and numbers shall never cross the desert. But I have no stomach for killing men, even traitors in cold blood. To have cut his throat in the battle would have eased my heart mightily, but this is a different thing." "By my counsel," said Lucy, "your Majesty shall give him another trial. Let him go free, with straight promise of fair dealings in the future. It may be that he will keep his word." "Maybe apes will grow honest, sister," said Edmund. "But, by the lion, if he broke it again, may it be at such a time and place that any of us could swipe off his head in clean battle." "It shall be tried," said the king, and then to one of the attendants said, "Send for the prisoner, friend." Rapidash was brought before them in chains. To look at him, anyone would have supposed he had passed the night in a noxome dungeon, without food or water, but in reality he had been shut up in quite a comfortable room, and provided with an excellent supper. But he was sulking far too furiously to touch the supper, and had spent the whole night stamping and roaring and cursing. He naturally did not now look his best. "Your Royal Highness needs not to be told," said King Loon, "that by the law of nations, as well as by all reason of prudent policy, we have as good a right to your head as ever one mortal man had against another. Nevertheless, in consideration of your youth and ill nurture, devoid of all gentleness and courtesy which you have doubtless had in the lands of slaves and tyrants, we are disposed to set you free and unharmed on these conditions. First, that, curse you for a barbarian pig, sputtered Rapidash. Do you think I will even hear your conditions? Faugh! You talk very largely of nurture, and I know not what. It's easy to a man in chains. Ha! Take off these vile bonds, give me a sword, and let any of you who dares debate with me. Nearly all of the lords sprang to their feet, and Corin shouted, Father, can I box him, please? Peace, your majesties, my lords, said King Rowan. Have you no more gravity among us than to be chaffed by the taunt of a poppycock? Sit down, Corin, or shalt leave the table. I ask your highness again to hear our conditions. I hear no conditions from barbarians and sorcerers, said Rapidash. Not one of you dare touch a hair on my head. Every insult you have heaped on me shall be paid with oceans of Narnian and Archenlandish blood. Terrible shall be the vengeance of the Tisrock, even now, but Gilmy and the burnings and the torturings in these northern lands shall become a tale to frighten the world. Beware the world 1,000 years hence. Beware, 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 the bolt of Tash falls from above. Does it ever get caught in a hook halfway down? Asked Corin. Shame, Corin, said the king. Never taunt a man save when he is stronger than you. Then, as you please. Oh, you foolish Rapidash, sighed Lucy. Next moment, Cor wondered why everyone at the table had risen and was standing perfectly still. Of course, he did the same himself, and then he saw the reason. Aslan was among them. Though no one had seen him coming, Rapidash started at the immense shape of the lion paced slowly in between him and his accusers. Rapidash, said Aslan, take heed, your doom is very near. But you may still avoid it. Forget your pride. What have you to be proud of? And your anger? Who has done you wrong? And accept the mercy of these good kings. Then Rapidash rolled his eyes and spread out his tongue, his mouth in a horrible, long, worthless grin like a shark, and wagged his ears up and down. Anyone can learn how to do this, if they take the trouble. He had always found this very effective in Colorman. The bravest had trembled when he made these faces, and ordinary people had fallen to the floor, and sensitive people had often fainted. But what Rapidash didn't realize is that it's very easy to frighten people who know you can have them boiled alive the moment you give the word. The grimaces didn't look at all alarming in Archenland. Indeed, Lucy only thought Rapidash was going to be sick. Demon! 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 Shrieked the prince. I know you. You are the foul fiend of Narnia. You are the enemy of the gods. Learn who I am, horrible phantasm. I have descended from Tash, the inexorable, the irresistible. The curse of Tash is upon you. Lightning in the shape of scorpions shall rain upon you. The mountains of Narnia shall be ground into dust. Have a care, Rapidash, said Aslan quietly. The doom is nearer now. It is at the door. It has lifted the latch. Let the skies fall, shrieked Rapidash. Let the earth gape. Let blood and fire obliterate the world. Be sure I will never desist till I have dragged to my palace by her hair the barbarian queen, the daughter of Dog. The hour has struck, said Aslan, and Rapidash saw, to his supreme horror, that everyone had begun to laugh. They couldn't help it. Rapidash had been wagging his ears all this time, and as soon as Aslan had said, the hour has struck, his ears began to change. They grew longer and more pointed, and soon were covered with grey hair. And while everyone was wondering where they had seen ears like that before, Rapidash's face began to change too. It grew longer and thicker at the top, and larger-eyed, and the nose sank back into the face, or else the face swelled up and out and became all nose, and there was hair all over it, and his arms grew longer, and came down in front of him still, till his hands were resting on the ground. Only there weren't hands now, they were hoofs, and he was standing on all fours, and his clothes disappeared. And everyone laughed louder and louder, because they couldn't help it. For now what had been Rabadash was simply and unmistakably a donkey. The terrible thing was that his human speech lasted a moment longer than his human shape. So when he realized the change was coming over him, he screamed out, "Oh, not a donkey! Mercy if we're even a horse! A horse! Ee-haw! Ee-haw!" And so the words died away into a donkey's bray. "Now hear me, Rabadash," said Aslan. "Justice shall be mixed with mercy. You shall not always be an ass." And of course the donkey twitched its ears forward. That also was so funny that everybody laughed all the more. They tried not to, but they tried in vain. "You have appealed to Tash," said Aslan, "and in the temple of Tash you shall be healed. You must stand before the altar of Tash in Tashbaan at the great autumn feast this year, and there at the sight of all Tashbaan your ass's shape will fall from you, and all men will know you for Prince Rabadash. But know that as long as you live, if ever you go more than 10 miles away from the great temple in Tashbaan, you shall instantly become again as you are now. And from that second change there will be no return." There was a short silence, and then they all stirred and looked at one another as if they were waking from sleep. Aslan was gone, but there was a brightness in the air and on the grass, and a joy in their hearts, which assured them that he had been no dream, and anyway, there was the donkey in front of them. King Loon was the kindest hearted of men, and on seeing his enemy in this regrettable condition, he forgot all his anger. "Your Royal Highness," he said, "I am most truly sorry that things have come to this extremity. Your Highness will bear witness that it was none of our doing. And of course we shall be delighted to provide your Highness with shipping back to Tashbaan for the treatment which Aslan has prescribed. You shall have every comfort which your Highness' situation allows, the best of the cattle bolts, the freshest carrots and thistles." But a deafening bray from the donkey and a well-aimed kick at one of the guards made it clear that these kindly offers were ungratefully received. And here, to get him out of the story, we'd better finish off with Rabadash. He, or it, was duly sent back by boat to Tashbaan, and brought into the temple of Tash at the great autumn festival, and then he became a man again. But of course 4,000 or 5,000 people had seen the transformation, and the affair could not possibly be hushed up. And after the old Tizaroc's death, when Rabadash became Tizaroc in his place, he turned out to be the most peaceable and Tizaroc Galerman had ever known. This was because he, not daring to go more than 10 miles from Tashbaan, he could never go on a war himself, and he didn't want his Darkhans to win fame in the wars at his expense, for that is the way Tizarocs get overthrown. But though his reasons were selfish, it made things much more comfortable for all the smaller countries around Kalaman. His own people never forgot that he had been a donkey. During his reign and to his face he was called Rabadash the Peacemaker. But after his death and behind his back he was called Rabadash the Ridiculous. And if you look him up in a good history of Kalaman, try at your local library, you can still find him under that name. And to this day in Kalaman schools, if you do something unusually stupid, you will very likely be called a second Rabadash. Meanwhile, at Anvard, everyone was very glad that he had been disposed of before the real fun began, which was a grand feast held that evening on the lawn before the castle, with dozens of lanterns to help the moonlight, and wine flowed, and tales were told, and jokes were cracked, and then silence was made, and the king's poet and 2 fiddlers stepped into the middle of the circle. Aravis and Cor prepared themselves to be bored, for the only poetry they knew was the Calorman kind, and you know what that was like. But at the very first scrape of the fiddles, a rocket seemed to go up inside their heads, and the poet sang the great old lay of fair Olvin, and how he fought the giant Pyre, and turned him into stone. And that is the origin of Mount Pyre. It was a 2-headed giant. And won the lady Liln for his bride, and when it was all over, they wished it were going to be begun again. And though Bree couldn't sing, he told the story of the fight at Zindreth, and Lucy told again, though they all, except Aravis and Cor, had heard it many times, but they all wanted it again, the tale of the wardrobe, and how she and King Edmund and Queen Susan and Peter the High King first came into Narnia. And presently, as was certain to happen sooner or later, King Loon said it was time for young people to be in bed. And tomorrow, Cor, he said, shalt come over all the castle with me and see the estates, and mark all its strengths and weaknesses, for it will be thine to guard when I am gone. But Corin will be king then, father, said Cor. Nay, lad, said King Loon, thou art my heir. The crown comes to thee. But I don't want it, said Cor. I'd far rather. 'Tis no question what thou want'st, Cor, nor I either. 'Tis the course of law. But if we're twins, we must be the same age. Nay, said the king with a laugh, one must come first. Art Corin's elder brother by full 20 minutes. And his better too, let's hope, though that's no great mastery. And he looked at Corin with a twinkle in his eye. But, father, couldn't you make whichever you like to be the next king? No, the king's under the law, for it's the law makes him king. Hast no power to start away from thy crown than any sentry from his post. Oh dear, said Cor. I didn't want it at all, and Corin, I'm most dreadfully sorry. I never dreamed my turning up was going to chisel you out of your kingdom. Hurrah, hurrah, said Corin. I shan't have to be king. I shan't have to be king. I'll always be a prince, and princes have all the fun. That's truer than thy brother knows, Cor, said the king, for this is what it means to be a king. To be first in every desperate attack, and last in every desperate retreat. And when there's hunger in the land, as must by now and then in bad years, to wear finer clothes and laugh louder over a scantier meal than any man in your land. When the two boys were going upstairs to bed, Cor again asked Corin if nothing could be done about it. And Corin said, if you say another word about it, I'll knock you down. It would be nice to end the story by saying that after that the two brothers disagreed about anything again, but I'm afraid it would not be true. In reality, they quarreled and fought just about as often as any other two boys would, and all of their fights ended, if they didn't begin, with Cor getting knocked down. For though they both grew up to become great swordsmen, Cor was the more dangerous man in battle. Neither he nor anyone else in the northern countries could ever equal Corin as a boxer. That was how he got his name of Corin Thunderfist, and how he performed his great exploit against the lapsed bear of Stormness, which was really a talking bear that had gone back to wild bear habits. Corin climbed up to its lair on the Narnian side of Stormness one winter day when the snow was on the hills, and boxed it without a timekeeper for 33 rounds. At the end, it couldn't see out of its eyes, and became a reformed character. Erebus also had many quarrels, and I'm afraid even fights with Cor, but they always made it up again, so that years later, when they were grown up, they were so used to quarreling and making it up again that they got married, so as to go on doing it more conveniently. And after King Loon's death, they made a good king and queen of Archenland. And Ram the Great, the most famous of all of the kings of Archenland, was their son. Bree and Wyn lived happily to a great age in Narnia, and both got married, but not to one another. And there weren't many months in which one or both of them didn't come trotting over the pass to visit their friends in Anvard. And there ends our story of the horse and his boy. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have any suggestions for another bedtime story, please leave a comment below. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.